Welcome to CrossPlatform podcast, where we discuss how to solve productivity problems across platforms. I'm Augusto Pinaud,
And I'm Art Gelwicks.
and today we're talking about e-waste, electronic waste, and how much of it we generate and how much of it we avoid to generate. So let's start, Art, with how much e-waste you think it should
Uh,
generate.
well, I did a little research um, ahead of time, and it says, according to Statista, more than 50 million metric tons of e-waste is generated globally every year. That works out to about 7 kilograms per capita. That's those are numbers that are hard to wrap your head around. I mean, 50 million metric tons of e-waste. Now, and let's be clear too, this isn't just like garbage. This is specifically technology waste.
Mhm.
Now, it also includes things like TVs and refrigerators and things like that, but the bulk of it is laptops, computers, flat screens, that sort of thing. And they're made up of so much stuff that you can't just dump into a landfill. You can't just get rid of because it won't decompose. It won't go away. And in many cases, it's toxic. So when we're looking at these kinds of numbers, it's just literally mind-boggling.
You
Every
know,
company that I've Go ahead, I'm sorry.
sorry, no, no, go, continue.
I was going to say every company that I've seen, at least large company, is touting some sort of an e-waste program to be able to say, hey, we're at least doing something with this or dealing something with this. I've looked up Apple's footprint, their generation of e-waste, 2017 through 2021, and at their peak, they were at about 58,000 tons of e-waste. Uh, in 2020, they actually got down to 45, and then in 2023, it looks like they were back up to 52. So they seem to be relatively consistent if you look over the time period about the amount of e-waste that's generated. And I'm not calling out just Apple. It just happened to be that's one of the
Right.
stats I found. But if we think about those large production companies and we think about the equipment that's being generated, there's a lot of e-waste that is being produced. Now, I get into a little bit of a concern with some of these numbers because I don't know if that's waste that they're producing as part of the process of producing other things, or does that factor in all the stuff that they've made that is then being wasted? I have a sneaking feeling it's not the second case. It's not taking into conclusion, all of the iPhone 4s that finally get discarded and things like that.
Right.
Um, Samsung, same way. Samsung touts the fact that they are a heavy recycler and they're gathering recycled material for reuse. They're talking about the fact that they're on track to collect 8 billion pounds of electronics globally by 2020, and they have a goal to collect and recycle 15 billion pounds of electronic globally by 2030. Now, that's an accumulated number, that's not on a yearly basis. But it shows, and I think it goes to the core of this topic, and one of the reasons why it kind of jumped out to me and I wanted to discuss it. We are at this point where we are perpetually adding to this pile of e-waste, and we don't have a good way to minimize it. We don't have a good way to choose, uh, I want to say rationally, a way to get this under control. So when you and I are talking about like our last episode, we were talking about spending some money and spending $2,000. Uh, we didn't talk at all in the entire episode about selecting things that are climate friendly or e-waste friendly or recyclable. That just didn't really come up as a factor. And I don't think it was intentional on either of our parts, but I think it's one of those things that, well, maybe it does need to be a factor. What do you think?
Wow. I did not expect that question, and I don't know. I honestly don't have a good answer for that. At least I have, I need to admit, I have never considered the purchase of my devices based on that. I have extend the life of some of those devices as much as possible. So, for example, installing Chrome or Chromium into all PCs and installing, keeping the Macs running. So, but I have never considered, will I buy this device based on waste? And I don't think so.
I mean, we've gotten to the point where, for the most part, we've had enough technology in our hands over the years, iteration after iteration after iteration, that we all have a drawer somewhere of
Yep.
old gear. I mean, if you do anything related to technology, you've got that drawer of stuff that just is outdated, doesn't get software updates anymore, and that's one of the things that's pushing this in my mind. Um, and you really don't have a good option as to being able to do something with it. There's no really good
Nope.
choice. I mean, there are programs out there, there's donation structures and things like that. They're often very labor intensive to go through, and they're very selective. And just looking at one of the stats here, I'm pulling off of a site, it says only 17.4% of the e-waste in 2019 was formally collected and recycled, which means, you're talking more than 80% of that didn't get gathered, reused, and managed effectively. I've been thinking about this quite a bit from a device standpoint, not so much, how do I change the purchases that I've made, because purchases made are purchases made. But is this something that I can include in the process of planning out my platform? So I started poking around a little bit. I wanted to say, and I asked myself, how easy would this to be to do? How easy would it be to make my decisions based on the impact of these devices when they have lived their lives? Um, I found it's not easy. It is, you will take 3 times, and I'm just speculating a number, but 3 times as long trying to find equipment that is targeted to be climate friendly, e-waste friendly, um, than you will just going and finding a piece of equipment. And that to me is like, all right, so is it worth rethinking some things? Here's a perfect example. We have talked about many, many times about the benefits of digital ink and digital capture. And we've always said that it makes sense to use digital ink for handwriting capture and things like that because it's searchable, it's easily scalable, lots of wonderful benefits. The one thing we've never talked about the fact is you can recycle a notebook.
Right.
Really hard to recycle a tablet. Is that is that a significant weight factor to the decision process? Should it be? Is there a scale of benefit that we need to look at and say, well, okay, if I don't need it to be digital, can I just use paper? Because I know that the paper will get recycled. I'll throw it in the recycling bin. And paper's an easy one. We're really good at paper, or at least fairly good at paper. Um, I think this is a factor that we have to start including in our thought processes though, and our decision making. I mean, if we're going to expend money and make investments in technologies for our own platforms, well, honestly, I think we have to look at their lifespan. Look at the devices that we've talked about in the past, let's say around Chromebooks. And if you've followed this show, you've heard me say this numerous times. I've got a Chromebook that literally just crossed its lifeline. It's done. It's not getting updates anymore. Now, technically, I could probably use it for another year or two. I just wouldn't get any security updates, and that's not a good thing. Uh, But what do I do with it now? Do I recycle it? Do I turn it into something else? What's the this becomes a problem now in this device. Now on things like Chromebooks, it's like, oh, okay, I can get one that maybe has like a 10-year lifespan. It's guaranteed for 10 years of software updates. That's cool. And I think that's one of the things that is throwing a lot of these devices off, is the fact that the software dies before the hardware does anymore.
That is, and that is a problem. I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and he found a way to hack the Macintosh or the Apple installing software so you can install much recent software into machines that they have considered now obsolete, quote unquote. Okay, and his case in point is he had a MacBook Pro with 500 gigabyte SSD and 16 megabytes of RAM. Now, as a machine, this machine is still pretty capable for a lot of things. So why? But the Apple consider that vintage and do not update it anymore. So he was looking for ways to save or extend the life of this machine. So what was interesting was he found a way, and he's testing it right now, to extend the software longer. But the problem is, as you said, the software now it's expiring before the hardware, and Apple, because it's where my life goes around, okay, they are keeping the current operating system and the one prior on the update. So that means if your machine will not get an update this year, you will still get a couple more years of updates. Does that mean that machine is not capable? No, I actually have a problem with one machine I have in here. It's an old iPad, but I use it for one of the programs that we have on Personal Productivity Club. There is a part in there called the co-working space. Okay. And that is the machine for co-working space. It's on most of the day in the Zoom in the co-working space. Do I need more machine than that? No. Do I need security on this machine? Yes. So this machine very soon is going to die. Okay. It's going to not get any more updates. And for what I use it, it still has a life. Okay, we'll continue to run Zoom. That is what I need to run in that machine, basically. But I will need to decide what I'm going to do with this. What isn't, and as I have that device, if I look on the back of my desk, you are going to find some testing equipment, some old keyboards, some Kindle devices that are old. The battery doesn't last long enough to keep it in the work. Now, what are you going to do with those? Because part of the reason there is a pile is exactly what you are describing. The pile seems better than put them in the landfill. And where do you take them? Yes, if you go and buy a new iPad, Apple will give you 3 pennies for your old Apple device. But how about all the others? As you said, laptops are more upgradable. Okay, you can install Chrome and then last it, we make them last for a little bit more, regardless if it's a Windows, a PC, or a Mac, or a PC or a Mac. But with the tablets, with the phones, there is not so thin. So, and again, when I thought about this, I on this topic, I thought on okay, what are we doing to reduce it? But I don't honestly focus on desktop and laptops because it's where we do it easily and consistently. And I did not honestly thought on any of my notes, tablets and phones. That is probably one of the biggest devices on volume that we have. Most people have a device. If I look on that corner, there is two old iPhones, one an iPhone 6, one an iPhone X. Okay, the iPhone X is not getting any more updates this year. Okay, the iPhone 6 already is not getting more updates. So you make a very good point on the e-waste. And should we consider this a criteria as you ask for our upgrades? Or we are getting to the point that this is critical to establish where these things could be recycled or properly destroyed?
Yeah, it really throws the entire evaluation on its head. Because when you start to look at things, again, like we've talked about, if you're looking to make a decision between buying a desktop and a laptop, if you're thinking about e-waste and e-waste mitigation, a desktop has the advantage
Mhm.
because it's expandable, because its components can be swapped out, it's repairable. If you have a laptop, the odds are very good it's not. You are pretty much in a fixed configuration. Now, interestingly enough, I was trying to do some poking around and say, okay, what companies are offering devices that are designed to be climate and e-waste friendly, or at least respective of that? There is a very, very small, I mean, literally, I can count it on 3 fingers on one hand, number of companies that even have any offering that is a device that's designed to not only be climate friendly, but also be repairable, be maintainable. And I consider repairability part of the e-waste question because so many devices, especially on the lower end, when they break, they break. It's
Mhm.
almost not worth, from a pricing standpoint, repairing the device. It just makes sense just to replace it if you're looking at it purely from the dollar standpoint. So that becomes an added difficulty. But bringing tablets and phones into the conversation makes it that much more recognizable. Up until this point, we've had a lot of phones and we've had a lot of tablets, specifically phones, though, that you would keep for 2 years, maybe 3 on the outside, and then you'd upgrade. And especially here in the US, the carriers would be encouraging you to upgrade as frequently as possible. Um, but now we're also getting to a point where the devices are so good, they can last 3 years, they can last 4 years, they can last 5 years. Similar to the Chromebook I have, my phone is now not going to receive the next update in software. It'll
Right.
receive security updates for a while, but it's not going to receive the next software version. So the question is that important to me to upgrade? And if so, I've just got a little black block of e-waste now that something needs to happen to it. It's frustrating because one side of me wants to say, okay, what I want to do the best that I can. I want to choose the most e-waste friendly, the most climate friendly items. I want to feel good about the equipment I'm putting around me. The other side of me, though, is man, this is really complicating the entire process and conversation. I need to just do the simple, basic implementation and go from there. And as we've talked about in the past, if you look at something on the lower end, or something from a non-major distributing company, the odds are pretty good that their take is, yeah, if it breaks, get another one. Don't repair it. We don't recycle. We
Right.
don't deal with any of that. Find your local recycler, uh, which is a struggle in urbanized areas, much less in rural areas or anything else like that. So thinking about this and thinking about the e-waste part again, I go back to what can be done. I think for our own perspectives, we can have a better sense as to when do you actually need to upgrade a device? When do you need to add another piece of tech to your pile? Knowing what the lifespan is of that item. We've talked about in the past your technology cards. Uh, that to me seems like a good addition to the technology card as to what's the logical lifespan of this particular item. And when it reaches that end of days, what are you going to do with it? What's the process of decommissioning and getting rid of it? I think about, and, and it's interesting. It, just discussing this now, it made me think about something. A lot of companies have old PCs that keep running. they're running old versions of the software. They're running Windows 10. Some in some cases are running Windows 7. Uh, but they've got machines that have been around since 2015, 2013 that are still
Mhm.
just chugging along doing their job. Is that something where it's actually benefiting us from an e-waste standpoint? Because if we think about those as related to any other device, those would have been decommissioned and put out to pasture long ago, but yet they're still able to keep chugging along. So that then raises the question in my mind, do you need to look at operating systems that have long lifespan? Is Does the lifespan of the device help mitigate its e-waste footprint? I don't know. I don't have answers to these. I'm sure the answers are out there. Maybe they're not clear or cut and dry. What is the waste that is produced to produce non-waste items? I don't know. Sounds like it's something that could just be a spiral that you get into. But I think
So,
it's something that we need to consider.
so for me, I'm going to say there has been, I'm going to call it a change into that. There was a time, and I know this change has nothing to do with e-waste and more related to the fact that, as you said, software now expire sooner than hardware. It used to be the other way. Okay, it used to be that you needed to upgrade so you could keep up with, you know, the the software that was coming out. Now there is so much power that it doesn't happen. So my criteria for update change at some point. And I'm going to say it was probably around 2016, 17 when I begin keeping the hardware much longer. And I begin keeping the hardware really until security updates are not more available. So the last MacBook I upgraded exactly for that reason. I I upgraded because Apple considered the machine obsolete and was not going to provide any more, or not going to allow me to install the newest software. Okay.
Mhm.
And because of part of the work, what I do, it's play on those softwares, solve problem with those softwares. I needed the newest one. So that was my upgrade. But that machine was 10 years old. The machine prior to that was probably 5. Same thing with the iPads. The iPads now, they if they don't die, I have one right now that is on the verge of we need an update, and I'm waiting for the thing to die. Um, it's not obsolete. No, it's just used for so many hours that it's now showing the
Mhm.
use. But I now wait until that moment where, or try at least to wait until that moment where they are considered obsolete, where they are not going to get now the latest of the greatest. And then that's when, for me, the criteria is okay, now it's time to update. Before that, it's not happening in my case. And I am okay with that. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't know if my needs have changed um, in comparison to what I had before need wise, or is the hardware so ahead that the software can still hold it. I um, The other thing that I notice is these machines stay in use much longer. And I don't know if that's because of the kids or what, but my machines, they used to go to technically e waste much faster than what they go now. And yeah, now they pass through the kids, and the kids, give them a little bit more life than what I used to get from that. So is that part also of this process? I don't know.
I think it needs to be considered. I mean, when something never used to consider very much was the hand-me-down nature of devices, um, especially laptops and PCs. I think, and this is just personal anecdote, I think laptops and PCs have a much lower incidence of being passed down to someone else. Sometimes they are, but it's more so tablets and phones. I think they more frequently, for example, when you upgrade your iPad, you pass down your iPad to the next person. We always had this with our kids that when we upgraded a phone, when my wife or I would upgrade our phones, our old phone would then get passed down to our kids because at that point, if they break it, they break it. But we know it still functions, and we've paid for it over time. So I think those types of approaches have a very logical consideration, but I do think this is part of that factoring that we need to take into when we start to decide on technologies. For example, I'll go back to the desktop versus laptop. If I'm thinking about a desktop device, I want it to be as expandable as possible so it's upgradable and repairable. Downside of a desktop is it is just that, it's a desktop. If it's a laptop, to be e-waste cognizant, I should look at a laptop that will last as long as it can. That
Mhm.
should last the maximum lifetime before it has to be replaced. That should be a significant measuring factor. So, with that in mind, if I go on the low end, go and buy the Amazon Prime special $150 laptop, I should understand that that's going to become e-waste sooner rather than later
Correct.
when it comes to comparison. If I get a machine that I know it has a robust processor, plenty of RAM, plenty of storage that I can get several years out of, that's a plus on the side of e-waste, management and generation. And it's really just getting devices that you're going to keep using and finding ways to use them. And we've talked about this in the past too, not buying tech to solve a singular problem,
Mhm.
not going out and just, making a purchase because it does one thing really well. This needs to be multi-capable technology to extend that lifetime. And when we think about, like, right now, the headphones I have right now are wired headphones. They're just Bose wired headphones, but they work great. They work fantastic, and they will continue to work for ages. Why? Because it's an old tech, but it's a reliable tech. Is this something I can count on and not have to go buy another 4 or 5 pairs of headphones? Absolutely. Will I probably buy 4 or 5 pairs of headphones? Totally different conversation, different show.
So
However,
let me before you dig yourself too deep into that one, let me
oh,
tell you mine. I have also, I think there are QC15. There are also Bose. Okay. According to Amazon, I bought them on 2005. And the only reason I
wow.
know that is because the the foam on the ears, I have replaced them already once and it's already getting peeled. So I went Amazon, okay, look into my cart and type Bose. So that way they give me, what is the right model of the thing that I need to buy and buy it again. And that's how I found that. And that happened actually this weekend. So it's fresh in my mind. But that's a perfect example. Okay. I have bought to those things, the foams. I have replaced the one on the top and the one on the ears once. Is going to happen for a second time, and I replaced the cable connector with a Bluetooth connector.
Okay.
Okay. I don't remember the cost. Don't I know the foam are 35 bucks because I just bought them. But the how much was the Bluetooth thing, I honestly don't know. Okay. But that thing was cheaper than buy a new pair of headphones or probably equivalent, but keeping the high quality of my Bose. My Bose has an incredible noise cancellation and making e-waste now last maybe 5, maybe 10 more years. If you consider those things are all, they're 17 years old. They're old. Okay.
Mhm.
We can consider those proudly, call them vintage. Okay. But they work incredibly well. And it's just a matter of replace that $35 piece. one of the things that I think, because of where the technology was pre, probably Windows 7, prior to Windows 7, you really needed to upgrade. Your machine was too slow. It doesn't matter if you
Mm.
were Mac or PC. It's around the year, not around the technology. What is happening now, as you said, is our hardware is too powerful. Our technology on everywhere is too powerful. So, but we continue in many cases keeping that idea that, oh, we need to upgrade instead of we need to find a way to fix it, a way to make it happen. And I will say this with the cases on the iPads. Over the years, if I look at the iPad I have in front of me, the iPad in front of me, it's a 2019 machine. So it's probably October 2019. It's going to go to 4 years. Okay. This machine had probably 3 or 4 cases in that time. So one per year. Okay, why? Well, because the use of the machine has changed. Okay.
Yeah.
Things, and can I buy the upgrade to the new one? Yeah. Or I can look how that change may be affected by a new case. And case in point, I just bought a new keyboard for this machine because I wanted to have two devices side by side. And I really like the cantilever keyboard. I love the angle. So I bought a small cantilever that I can put with magnets, my iPad attached to the thing. So I can do accomplish two things. One, I can write in portrait mode. Second thing is I can use the cantilever. Do I need it? No. Now, buying that accessory or creating, adding accessories to your equation, I agree. At the end of the life of the device, you have more e waste. No question about it. What you don't sometimes notice is that when you put, instead of accessorize to update, you buy new devices to update, the amount of e waste grows exponentially. Could I have bought, let's ignore numbers and dollars and expenses, could I have bought a new iPad to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish? Yes. Will I be easily convinced of that? Of course. Okay. The accessorize is the hardest call, not the easiest call. Let me clarify that. But when you start studying those accessories and you start studying, okay, how can I make this better? What you discover is many of these things for which you will buy the new device can be obtained with the proper accessory. And now
Correct.
you reduce significantly the creation of new waste.
Yeah, I agree completely with you on that. I mean, when you look at why you're going to upgrade a particular device, many times you can keep the one you have and build on it. Um, I think we're going to see more of a push to that again as well. I'm just pulling up an article. The EU, I want to say, yeah, mid June, just dinged Apple to say, okay, by 2027, users have to be able to replace the batteries in their phones by themselves.
Mhm.
Well, okay. I remember when you could. I remember when we had phones that you could hot swap the batteries all the time. Well, not hot swap, but you could swap the batteries. You pop the plastic back off, pop in a new battery. I had Samsungs, multiple Samsungs that I did that, and I would buy extra batteries for and
My
charge
Trios,
those
my
batteries.
StarTags all had that.
It was great. So at some point, from a manufacturing standpoint, they decided that it made more sense to make this a sealed unit, whether it was to quote protect, to provide, IP68 rating. I don't know. There's a lot of debate and discussion as to what the rationale is behind it. But what you lost is the ability to take care of it yourself. And we all know that battery is one of the first things to go on, especially on a portable device. As the battery life gets shorter and shorter and shorter, it winds up not being effective. So I like the idea that these companies are being, I want to say, encouraged to make some of these aspects more repairable, more friendly. The battery's a big one. Personally, I think on any device, you should be able to upgrade or replace three things: the battery, the memory, and the storage. The rest of it, I'm fine. If the user can't fix the screen, can't fix a keyboard, kind of get that. That can be complicated. But you should be able to upgrade the memory, you should be able to replace and upgrade the storage, and you should be able to replace the battery. I have a laptop here, an Asus laptop that I love and I have had for years, and I gave it completely new life for myself. It's not a racehorse. Don't it's more of a little
Right.
donkey than anything else. But by replacing its battery, I have now restored it to active daily use. But what else has made that happen? Windows 11.
Mhm.
And I can say that because the difference between Windows 10 to Windows 11 is not a we need to wipe out your operating system for all intents and purposes and start you fresh. Once you have Windows 11 on a machine, the smaller updates that happen continue to update the device. They don't it's not like you immediately get flagged with every update that comes out, "Oh, this machine's not powerful enough. This machine's not powerful enough." I have had the opportunity to bring machines back to life through using Windows 11. I've also done it using Cloud Ready, which is now owned by
Google.
Google to what is it? Is it Flex Cloud Flex or Google Flex, or I can't
Google
remember the name
Flex.
of it.
Google Flex. Yeah.
Google Flex, yeah. That that's a really useful way to do it. For those who aren't familiar, Google Flex is an application. Basically, it's an operating system that you can install on old laptops that turn them almost into Chromebooks. Not fully, but pretty darn close, uh, which extends their life. You can really put them to good use then. And it means that that device that may have died and curled up in a corner now can continue working. Doesn't work entirely. Like it's not easy to bring a Chromebook back to life with it, which to me, I just don't understand that one. Um, but that's the type of thing where you have the combination of hardware that it continues to do the job that you need it to do, and you just need an operating system on it that will
Mhm.
do that as well. And unfortunately, most of the operating systems that you would switch to, things like Linux based systems, are well over the head of most users.
Yeah. And that is the other problem is for most users, what we are some of the stuff we're discussing on upgraded, it's above their, we just my mother-in-law PC died, okay, and we replaced it. And I'm seriously considering getting this 22 machine back to what it was, Windows. I don't remember exactly what her machine was. I don't think it was Windows 10. So, but I'm considering downgrading
Mhm.
it. Why? Because my user, that is my mother-in-law, okay,
Mhm.
it's really struggling with Windows 11. Why? Because it's difficult? No, because she doesn't have zero interest, is a basic user and wants to do five things, and this machine looks differently. Okay, it will be great if I could install a skin that will make it look Windows 8, I think is what she has. Okay,
Jeez.
I understand. I understand that your pain. That will be my pain. But it's a reality for many users. I was in a meeting not so long ago, and this person was saying that they, no, this person was saying that he has on his drawer four flip phones, and he was looking more on eBay.
Oh yeah. I got
And
a
I'm
drawer
looking
full
at
of them.
why. And I said, yeah, because if this phone, I know how to use this phone, and I don't want to learn to use a new phone.
Okay, so and this gets actually into a whole other show topic that we'll do in the future.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. There is a segment of the population, highly vocal segment of the population, that says, I don't understand technology. I don't want to understand technology. Don't change my technology on me. I want to keep using what I'm using. And that's fine. it's impractical, it's unrealistic, but it is a desire that they have. But that's one of the things that I find is interesting that drives certain technology decisions. For example, it drives people away from laptops and desktops and drives them to tablets. Because once they learn how to use, for example, iOS on an iPad, it doesn't really change that much.
Nope.
I mean, it's pretty much the same iteration after iteration. There's some new features, but I don't use an iPad very often, and I can go back and kind of muddle my way through it, except for the settings. They keep moving stuff around in there. Uh, But that adjustment is tough for a lot of people who have that mindset of this is what my technology should be. I always call those the TV remote people because they expect the buttons to be in the same place all the time. And if you give them a different TV remote, all of a sudden the TV remote is terrible.
Doesn't work.
This thing's horrible. It's not horrible. It works just fine. So that that ties into the whole e-waste conversation from an interesting perspective because these are the people who are typically holding on to technology for an extended period of time. They're not generating very much e waste. And the question is that a viable strategy? I mean, we look at saying, okay, I want to use the newest, latest, and greatest piece of software. Yeah, you're going to need some seriously new tech. But if we think about things, for example, cloud based systems, well, if the majority of the stuff you use is cloud based, even down to the point of your word processing and your spreadsheets and things like that, you have a much lower bar on the technology that you need to get, which means the
Right.
odds are pretty good that technology will be able to last longer. Again, if we think about it from like a Chrome OS perspective, that device can, in theory, last 10 years now because of updates.
Well, and my daughter is going to high school, and we needed to buy a new computer, and that was, I I'm not going to say that was based on the e-waste, okay, but I based the decision of the machine that I was going to buy based it on how long I wanted that machine to last
Right.
for her, and I bought a machine that today is way more machine than what she needs. But my thinking was, if she goes into a technical, you know, career in college, all bets are off. But if she goes to a non-technical degree, okay, this
Mhm.
machine should last high school and college.
Yeah.
Okay. And the only reason I'm saying that is if you go to a technical career, you need a hardware that hardware may not be enough.
That's a specialty. That's a
Okay.
specialty need. Yeah.
But if she goes to a regular career, this should last him college and high school, or high school and college. And somebody was asking me, that doesn't make sense. Okay, why you don't replace the machine? And again, I admit I didn't answer based on e-waste. Okay. I answer based on why why do I'm going to at the end of the years, if I buy, I have, and this is an argument I had with my father for
Mhm.
since I can remember. Okay, my dad is a Amazon special $150 laptop. Okay, and then he complains.
Yeah.
Okay, or sometimes do it worse. Okay, he buy the $150 and spend $100 in memory RAM 2 weeks later because you don't have enough. I say, okay, then why you didn't buy the 250 special? Okay, but that's a discussion that I'm never going to win.
Well,
Okay, but
that's
that's what I
uh,
see many people. And then a year later, well, the machine is falling apart. Well, yes, you bought the cheapest machine possible. It's not
mhm,
designed for you to last you long. It's designed to last you a year. So you
mhm,
can spend $200 to $400 a year, or you can invest a little bit more and see that thing lasting 10. My MacBooks has last long time. That my wife MacBook, there is a MacBook 12-inch, what Mark Artman called the MacBook Adorable. Okay, the the only problem the MacBook Adorable had is that Apple
mhm.
just declared that thing vintage. It
Right.
works. It have enough RAM. Okay, and honestly, if this other friend of mine hack it so it can install newer system, I will install the new system because that machine as a machine is fully capable. True, I bought it with the maximum of RAM. I bought it with enough hard drive. When I bought it, I make that machine to make it last. So,
And that's, I think that kind of brings us full circle on this conversation, because when we start to look at device purchases now, I mean, if the e-waste is part of the conversation, renewed machines are a viable part of the discussion, because
mhm.
if they're not renewed and working, where would they be? In a landfill. Is it going to do the job for me? Is it going to work? Can I get it replaced if I need to? Absolutely. Um, it should be part of the conversation. I just think at the end of the day, as we look at our productivity solutions that we put together for ourselves, we need to have this long-term mindset about them. Not what this device will do for me for the next, 12 months or 18 months, but is it going to be part of my system for 3 years, for 4 years? Am I going to get attached to it like my Chromebook and actually, feel bad that I can't use it now because it was such a good, viable, reliable part of my solution? And I think we need to make that a more common deciding factor in the technology we choose and how we build our solutions and what we decide on.
Well, I'm going now to add another variable before I answer that question. And it comes to exactly what you said. Are you going to use this machine for how long? And how high meet these machines your criteria? And let me explain
Mhm,
me. For me, portability is my first criteria. Okay. The portable the machine, that's what for me is the most important. Horsepower is the
mhm,
second, but I will take a slower machine, more portable, over a more powerful one any day of the week. Okay. Why? Because I like a small bag and I like my light bag and I don't
mhm,
want to carry a heavy one. Okay. So that's one. Actually, we're going to be traveling in a couple of days and we were looking into the bag and I went and bring the technology bag. And when I bring that, I say, I don't want to travel with these many things. And I start, going to the basic to see how light can I make it. Okay.
mhm,
But that part is very important to me. Second, fun is important to me. I like to be a device that I'm going to look at that and feel fun, be wanted to grab it. I don't want to have a device that every time I look at it, it's like, okay, I don't not interested into that. So
mhm.
those things are important, and for some people those things are irrelevant, completely
Yes.
irrelevant. So that criteria need to exist. And the third thing is, do you really need new hardware? Okay. And for some people, the answer is yes. No, you know what? No, I want to buy this thing. Okay. I had a client who he buy a new iPad every September. He put it on his Apple card and he make 12 payments. And when he make the payment number 12, he walk into the Apple store and say, please give me the new one, upgrade this model. Okay. Why? Because he considered that his vehicle. Okay. He said, this is
Mhm,
like a leasing of my vehicle. I will lease this machine and re-upgrade it. And 12 months later, he see what he will do with that machine. And he's very happy. And if Apple will lease him the machine, he will do it that way. Okay.
mhm,
Perfect. That is your criteria. If your criteria is no, I don't need to have a new machine every year, then when you get in that machine, think long term. Think, okay, if I buy this machine today and I'm buying with these specs, what will be the specs that I need to have for this machine to maybe last me 2 more years, maybe
mhm,
4 more years, maybe 10 whole years? And when you start looking at that, then you start not looking at the $150 special on Amazon, okay, but looking at the cost that that $150 will have in 10 years
Mhm.
when you needed to
No, I
replace that
absolutely.
thing 5 times.
Absolutely. And that's now what's fortunate with some of that is, for example, when he goes through and upgrades that iPad, Apple's very good about taking the old iPad, if he turns it in, for example,
Correct.
um, or does a trade in, they will purge it, wipe it. If it's in saleable form or configuration, they'll resell it or sell it off at an auction. You can buy those inexpensively. And that's where we get into that catch 22 discussion for a manufacturer. Because if a manufacturer is going to support resold items or renewed items or anything like that, then I think as a minimum, they need to make sure that security updates are continued to be delivered until that that item doesn't work anymore. I don't care about full operating system. No, I get that, totally get that. But the security updates need to be there because if this thing's still going to be operating out there, as a manufacturer, I really only have two choices: to support the devices that are out there or cut them off at the knees and say you must upgrade.
You
It's
must
two different
upgrade.
approaches, and it's really the Microsoft versus the Apple approach, because Microsoft has gotten themselves into problems over the years for the length of time that they will continue to allow operating systems to run. They
Right.
kind of have to, based on the diversity of the platforms that are out there. Apple, on the other hand, owning both the hardware and the software platforms, have been able to say, hey, you know what? This is it. 3 years, it's done. We won't touch it anymore. You're on your own, and move on.
Well, but it's a lot more than that. It is around 10 years that Apple is giving you to keep into that. So it is not that terrible, I think.
Okay. Okay. So we've had a lot of, I don't want to say doom and gloom attached to this. Um,
But we did.
I know, I know for me, this is going to become a more important factor. I mentioned earlier I was looking at devices that are supposed to be eco-friendly, and Acer actually offers a laptop called the Acer Vero, which has been out for a little while. But that device is made out of recycled plastic and recycled ocean glass, and it's designed to be repairable, so you can swap out the heat sink and the processor and the RAM and the battery with only a minimum number of screws removed in the casing. Is it ultra light? No. Is it ultra slim? No. Can you replace the keyboard? No. Can you replace the display yourself? No. So it's far from perfect, but at least it's taking it into consideration. If you look at Amazon's website, Amazon has a filter and they flag on items that say that they are climate pledge friendly, which is a specific criteria that they're applying. I say kudos to you for doing that. The only problem is when you apply that filter, you get like 3 devices back. So the
Right.
question is it that the filter's weak or is that the stuff going into the filter's weak? I don't know. I think we're going to have that discussion for a long, long time. But I know for myself, I want to start to consider this now. I think it's important enough that we take this into consideration as part of our deciding factors when it comes to our technology.
And I think it is I think it's critical. And I don't know yet, and I don't know the answer to this, if we are already into mass adoption of these ideas or we are still far. I'm seeing, and I don't know if all my geek friends are getting old or what, but I'm seeing more of what we discussed about the bows at the beginning of the show. People making their
Hmm.
technology, their quality technology last longer. Their quality technology, buying, for example, here in my office, I have a speaker that was made for the original Apple connector for the iPods. Okay. And I bought in Amazon an adapter that make that thing into a Bluetooth speaker. Okay. Why? Because the speaker as technology, okay, it works great. It sounds great and I really like it.
Hmm.
What it had is, well, it's old. It was from another era, but there we are seeing more and more, okay, those kind of adapters to connect those things, to turn, 12,000 made one very incredible, that it connects into the 3.5 millimeter, and now turn that thing into a Bluetooth receiver. And we're looking at more and more of these things. So maybe we are getting to a point where people is considering this more seriously, into making these devices, these hardwares that are ahead, lasting much longer.
I would hope so. I really do. I think we're grown up enough as a society to take this into consideration, that everything doesn't have to be instant gratification on this stuff. We can look at technologies like, for example, like the headphones I have that work well, that can be updated, can be, you replace the earpad or earpads, things like that, and know that I don't need to go buy 3 or 4 cheap headphone sets to try and desperately find one that will work and last more than 6 months. Um, it There is a lot of disposable tech out there. We just need to choose to not purchase disposable tech, and
Yep,
if there's no interest in it, it goes away. So
I agree with you. Oh, well, follow us where you like to listen to podcasts, like us or subscribe to us and leave us a review. You can also interact with us on Personal Productivity Club. We are Augusto Pinaud and Art Gelwicks. See you next time from your favorite device. Thank you.